Greta Hargrove, a dedicated nurse, finds herself at the center of a scandal that could shatter her life. How will she fight to reclaim her reputation when the truth seems just out of reach? Greta Hargrove walked through the bustling hospital corridor, her scrubs freshly pressed and her hair tied neatly back, ready to face another demanding shift. At 34, she was known for her dedication, her compassion, and her unwavering commitment to her patients. The hum of activity filled the air, punctuated by the beeping of monitors and the chatter of nurses tending to the sick. Greta thrived in this environment, where every day was an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. Today, however, the atmosphere was charged with tension. A high-profile fundraiser was taking place in the hospital's main hall, and the excitement was palpable. Guests in elegant attire mingled with hospital staff, their laughter echoing through the halls. But behind the scenes, a luxury medication went missing from the supply room, a detail that would soon shatter Greta's life. The CEO, under immense pressure to maintain the hospital's pristine reputation, quickly pointed fingers at her, a familiar face, yet an easy target. "Greta? Are you serious?" A colleague muttered, disbelief etched across their face. Others exchanged glances, some whispering doubts about her integrity, while a few openly ridiculed her. Greta stood frozen, her heart racing, as the weight of the accusations pressed down on her like a heavy shroud. The humiliation was swift and brutal. She was escorted out of the hospital, the whispers trailing behind her like shadows. Greta's mind raced, a whirlwind of confusion and despair. She knew she was innocent, yet the world around her crumbled. The loss of her reputation felt like a suffocating weight, leaving her questioning how everything had spiraled so quickly out of control. At home, Greta sank into the familiar embrace of her worn couch, the fabric cool against her skin but offering little comfort. The silence was deafening, filled only with the haunting echoes of the day's events. She couldn't eat or sleep, her stomach twisted in knots as she replayed the incident over and over in her mind. How had it come to this? She had dedicated her life to caring for others, yet here she was, stripped of her dignity and haunted by the scornful looks of her colleagues. Her thoughts drifted to happier times. Flashbacks flooded her mind, the joy she felt when she graduated nursing school, the pride in her mother's eyes as she pinned her first badge on her scrubs. Greta had always been the responsible one, sacrificing her dreams of travel and adventure to care for her sick mother, whose illness had kept her from pursuing a more thrilling life. She remembered the late nights spent studying, the long hours in the hospital, and the countless patients who had depended on her. Each memory felt like a painful reminder of what she stood to lose. Her phone buzzed, jolting her back to the present. It was a message from her friend, Arya, checking in. "I'm here for you, Greta. Let's grab coffee." But even the thought of seeing anyone filled her with dread. The whispers had reached her community, infiltrating the very fabric of her life. Greta felt isolated, a pariah in the town she had called home for so long. Friends she had leaned on for years now looked at her with suspicion, their expressions shifting from concern to pity, then quickly to disdain. As days passed, the emotional turmoil morphed into a simmering anger. How could they believe such accusations? Greta fought against the shame that threatened to consume her. She was not a thief, she had never been one to take the easy path, always choosing hard work over shortcuts. The injustice of it all ignited a fire within her, a flicker of determination amidst the despair. Greta realized she couldn't allow this to define her life. She had to fight back, not just for herself, but for the many who might face similar injustices in silence. The thought of standing idly by felt unbearable. She had always been a fighter, and this was no different. One night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Greta's mind began to piece together the fragments of the scandal. A fleeting memory surfaced, a moment she had almost forgotten. During the fundraiser, she had noticed a colleague acting suspiciously near the medication storage area. The memory was hazy, but it sparked something within her, a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there was more to this than met the eye. With renewed purpose, Greta decided to confront the truth. She needed to uncover the details of that night, to find the clues that would prove her innocence. But the hospital was off limits to her now. Determined, she reached out to a sympathetic security guard, Ethan, who had always treated her with respect. He had seen her work and knew her character. "Ethan, I need your help," she said, her voice steady but her heart pounding. "Can you let me see the security footage from the fundraiser?" Ethan hesitated, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. "Greta, I don't know if that's a good idea. The CEO has made it clear that..." "I'm not asking for permission," she interrupted, her determination spilling over into urgency. "I need to clear my name." After a moment of contemplation, he nodded slowly. "All right, meet me after hours. I'll help you." That night, the hospital was eerily quiet, the usual bustle replaced by an unsettling stillness. Greta's heart raced as she followed Ethan to the security office. The glow of the screens illuminated their faces as he pulled up the footage from the fundraiser. The anticipation was almost unbearable. As they scanned through the clips, Greta leaned closer, her breath catching in her throat. Then, just before the medication went missing, she spotted it, a shadowy figure lingering by the storage unit, their movements furtive and deliberate. The sight made her pulse quicken. There was something unmistakably wrong about the way they were handling the medication. "Do you see that?" she whispered, pointing to the screen. "That's not me." Ethan nodded, his brow furrowed in concern. "This could change everything, Greta. We need to figure out who that is." Fueled by the discovery, Greta felt a surge of resolve. She was closer to revealing the real culprit, and for the first time since the scandal broke, a sense of hope emerged from the ashes of despair. Armed with the newfound evidence, Greta felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This could be the breakthrough she needed to clear her name and reclaim her life. Yet, the weight of the situation pressed heavily on her shoulders. Would anyone believe her? She knew the hospital management had sided with the CEO, and she had seen the skepticism in her colleagues' eyes. The next day, she gathered her courage and set out for the hospital, clutching her phone with the video evidence like a lifeline. Each step felt heavier than the last, her heart thumping loudly in her chest. She had to confront her fears and show them the truth. As she approached the entrance, memories of laughter and camaraderie flooded back, mingling with the bitter taste of betrayal. The hospital that had once felt like home now loomed before her like an unfriendly fortress. Inside, the bustling energy of the morning shift clashed with the anxious knot in her stomach. Nurses moved swiftly, their faces a blur, but Greta felt their gazes linger on her longer than usual. Whispers followed her, sharp and pointed, and she couldn't shake the feeling that every conversation halted as she walked by. She was no longer just a nurse, she was a pariah, a figure of scorn. Summoning every ounce of strength, Greta made her way to the management office. She knocked on the door, and after a moment, it swung open. The CEO, Mr. Caldwell, looked up from his desk, surprise and irritation flickering across his face. "Greta, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be on the premises." "I need to speak to you," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I have evidence that can prove I didn't steal the medication." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms with skepticism. "Evidence? You think after everything that's happened, anyone will believe you?" Greta took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "I have security footage from the night of the fundraiser. I was cleared by the security guard to access it. Please, just watch it." A moment of silence stretched between them, and she could see the gears turning in his mind. He didn't want to give her the satisfaction of vindication, but curiosity flickered in his eyes. "Fine. I'll give you a minute. But make it quick." Greta followed him to the conference room, her heart racing as she prepared to lay bare her truth. As the video played, the tension in the room thickened, each second feeling like an eternity. She watched Mr. Caldwell's expression shift from disbelief to intrigue as the shadowy figure appeared on screen. "There," she exclaimed, pointing as the figure manipulated the lock on the medication storage. "That's not me. You have to see this." Mr. Caldwell's demeanor changed, his brows furrowing as he leaned closer to the screen. "Who is that?" he muttered, almost to himself. Greta's pulse quickened. "I don't know, but they took the medication right before it went missing. This proves I didn't do it." He paused the video, his expression now serious. "This could be serious for the hospital, Greta. You have to understand that. We can't just sweep this under the rug." "But I'm innocent," Greta insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. "You have to take this to the board. I need my name cleared." He sighed heavily, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'll discuss it with the board, but I can't promise anything. You must understand the pressure we're under." Greta nodded, feeling a mix of hope and frustration. "I just want the truth to come out. I've dedicated my life to this hospital. I deserve that much." As she left the room, a sense of determination surged within her. She had faced the CEO and presented her case. Now, all she could do was wait. The uncertainty gnawed at her, but she refused to let despair take hold again. Days turned into a blur of tension and anticipation. Greta stayed in touch with Ethan, who continued to support her from behind the scenes. They analyzed the footage together, trying to discern any details that could lead them to the identity of the thief. Each new day brought a mix of anxiety and hope, the struggle for justice becoming a shared mission between them. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Greta dressed carefully, donning a professional outfit that belied the turmoil within her. She could feel the weight of every judgmental glance as she walked into the conference room. The board members sat in a semicircle, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Mr. Caldwell stood at the front, ready to present. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady. "We have a matter of grave importance to discuss regarding the recent scandal involving medication theft." Greta's heart raced. This was it. She was finally going to be heard. As Mr. Caldwell continued, outlining the allegations and the impact on the hospital's reputation, Greta felt her stomach churn. She had to intervene. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "I have evidence that can exonerate me." The board members turned their attention to her, their expressions shifting from indifference to intrigue. Mr. Caldwell nodded for her to continue. With shaking hands, Greta presented her case, detailing the security footage and the figure she had seen tampering with the medication. Gasps filled the room as the gravity of her words sunk in. The atmosphere shifted dramatically, the judgmental gazes softening as they began to understand the truth of her situation. Greta felt a rush of adrenaline. She was finally reclaiming her narrative. As she laid out her findings, the tension in the room was palpable. The board members exchanged glances, their expressions changing as the reality of her innocence began to dawn on them. Hope flickered within Greta's chest. "Let's review the footage again," one of the board members suggested, prompting murmurs of agreement. Greta's heart soared. For the first time since the scandal erupted, she felt the tide turning in her favor. She was no longer alone in this fight. She was ready to reclaim her place in the world. Armed with her evidence, Greta stood in front of the board, her heart pounding in her chest. She was met with skeptical gazes and raised eyebrows as she presented her case. Her voice trembled slightly, but she pushed through, determined to make them see the truth. "This footage clearly shows someone else tampering with the medication storage. I didn't do it. I've dedicated my life to this hospital, and I deserve to be heard." Mr. Caldwell shifted uncomfortably in his seat, glancing at the other board members. "Greta, we'll review the footage, but you need to understand the implications of what you're asking." The hospital's reputation is at stake. I understand, but you can't let this false accusation ruin my life, she insisted, her frustration bubbling to the surface. I've worked hard for years, and I won't let someone else's actions define who I am. The board members began to murmur amongst themselves, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. Greta could see that her plea was having an impact, but she needed to do more. Please, just watch the footage. You'll see for yourselves that I'm innocent. With a reluctant nod from Mr. Caldwell, the footage was pulled up on the screen. Greta watched nervously as the room went silent, all eyes glued to the video of the fundraiser. When the shadowy figure appeared, the tension in the room thickened. There. That's not me, she exclaimed, pointing at the screen. You can clearly see someone else in my scrubs. As the scene unfolded, gasps echoed around the room. The board members leaned forward, their faces a mixture of disbelief and intrigue. Greta felt a flicker of hope igniting within her. Maybe, just maybe, she could reclaim her life after all. After the footage concluded, the room was abuzz with conversation. Mr. Caldwell stood, looking contemplative. This changes everything, he said finally. We need to investigate who this individual is and why they were in the medication storage area. Greta's heart soared. Thank you. I'm just asking for a chance to clear my name. I know I'm innocent. The board members began discussing the next steps, and Greta felt a rush of gratitude. She had fought back against the tide of doubt and fear, and now it seemed she was finally being heard. As the meeting concluded, Mr. Caldwell approached her. Greta, I appreciate your courage in bringing this to light. We'll do everything we can to address this issue and ensure that you are reinstated. You deserve better than what happened. Tears welled in Greta's eyes as she nodded, overwhelmed by the relief and hope flooding through her. Thank you, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. She left the conference room feeling lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The journey wasn't over, but she had taken a significant step toward justice. The whispers that had once haunted her were now whispers of intrigue and concern, and she could sense the shift in her colleagues' attitudes. Greta spent the following days working closely with the hospital management as they conducted their investigation. Each morning, she walked through the halls with her head held high, no longer the target of ridicule but a woman fighting for her truth. Ethan remained by her side, offering support and helping her navigate the complexities of the hospital's internal politics. Together, they pieced together the clues surrounding the shadowy figure. With each new detail, Greta felt a growing determination to see this through to the end. Finally, the day arrived when the hospital management revealed the findings of their investigation. Greta sat in the conference room, her heart racing as the board members filed in. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, and she could sense the collective breath being held as they prepared to share their conclusions. Mr. Caldwell stood at the front, his face a mixture of seriousness and relief. After a thorough investigation, we have identified the individual responsible for the theft. It was a fellow nurse who had been struggling with personal issues and took drastic measures in a moment of desperation. Gasps filled the room, and Greta felt a mix of emotions wash over her. The truth was finally coming to light, but the implications were heavy. We sincerely apologize for the harm this has caused Greta Hargrove. We acknowledge that we acted too quickly and did not afford her the trust she deserved, Mr. Caldwell continued, his tone earnest. We have decided to reinstate her with full honors, and we will be taking steps to ensure that this doesn't happen again. A wave of relief washed over Greta as the weight of the past few weeks began to lift. The apology felt like a balm on her wounded spirit, and she could see the genuine remorse in the eyes of her colleagues. As the meeting concluded, board members approached her one by one, offering their apologies and support. She felt the warmth of their words wrap around her like a comforting embrace. Greta had not only fought for her name but had also begun to mend the rift that had formed between her and the people she had once called friends. Finally, as the last board member left, Mr. Caldwell turned to Greta. I want you to know that we are committed to making this right. You are an invaluable part of our team, and we hope to support you in any way we can moving forward. Thank you, Greta replied, her voice steady. I just want to continue doing what I love, caring for patients. As she left the conference room, a sense of purpose filled her. She had fought hard to reclaim her life, and now, she was ready to move forward with renewed strength. The road ahead wouldn't be without challenges, but Greta was determined to embrace the future with open arms, ready to face whatever came her way. With her head held high, she walked through the hospital doors, no longer an invisible nurse but a respected member of the community once more. In a dramatic turn, Greta stood in the conference room, her heart pounding as she finally revealed the security footage at the board meeting. The room fell silent as the video played, showcasing the true culprit, a fellow nurse, in the act of stealing the medication. Gasps echoed around the room, and Greta could feel the atmosphere shift, the audience's perception of her transformed from suspect to victim in an instant. The figure on the screen, fumbling nervously with the lock of the medication storage, was unmistakably recognizable, a nurse she had once considered a friend, someone who had shared laughter and late-night shifts with her. As the video played on, she watched the actions unfold with a mix of disbelief and relief. The truth was finally coming to light, and she was no longer alone in her fight for justice. Who is that? One of the board members asked, shaking their head in disbelief as they processed the revelation. Greta felt a rush of vindication wash over her. This was it, this was what she had fought for. The real culprit was being exposed, and she could feel the weight of the accusations lifting from her shoulders. The board members murmured amongst themselves, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern as they realized the implications of what they had just witnessed. Mr. Caldwell, the CEO, looked visibly shaken. We need to address this immediately, he said, his voice steadying as he regained composure. This is a serious breach of trust, and we will not tolerate such behavior. Greta watched as the board convened, their discussions growing more animated. The nurse on the screen, who had betrayed her trust, was swiftly confronted. The atmosphere in the room turned electric as the board members deliberated on the consequences. Greta could hardly believe what she was witnessing, the swift downfall of the very person who had put her through hell. As the meeting progressed, the nurse was called in, her face pale as the reality of the situation unfolded before her. Greta could see the panic in her eyes, the realization that her actions had led to this moment of reckoning. She felt a strange mix of sympathy and satisfaction. The woman had made choices that had irrevocably harmed not only Greta but also her own career. The board members made their decision clear. Effective immediately, you are dismissed from your position at this hospital, Mr. Caldwell stated firmly, his voice echoing with authority. We cannot allow this to tarnish the integrity of our institution. Greta's heart raced as she listened, a wave of relief crashing over her. The truth was finally out, and justice was being served. The room began to buzz with the realization of what had just transpired. Colleagues who had once whispered behind her back now turned to her with expressions of remorse and support. As the meeting concluded, Mr. Caldwell approached Greta, a look of genuine apology on his face. Greta, I want to sincerely apologize for what you've endured. We made a grave mistake in believing the accusations without proper investigation. We should have trusted you. Tears of relief filled Greta's eyes as she nodded, feeling the weight of the past few weeks lift. Thank you for believing me now, she replied, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions. I just want to continue caring for my patients. That's all I've ever wanted. The board members rallied around her, offering their apologies and support. She felt the warmth of their words wrap around her like a comforting embrace as they expressed their regret for how quickly they had judged her. The realization that her colleagues were ready to stand by her side provided a glimmer of hope, illuminating the darkness that had clouded her life. As she left the conference room, a sense of purpose filled Greta. She had fought hard to reclaim her name, and now she was ready to move forward with renewed strength. The road ahead wouldn't be without challenges, but Greta was determined to embrace the future with open arms. With her head held high, she walked through the hospital doors, no longer an invisible nurse but a respected member of the community once more. In the days that followed, the hospital management worked to ensure that such an injustice would never happen again. They implemented new procedures for handling accusations and reinforced their commitment to supporting their staff. Greta was reinstated, and with it came a promotion, an acknowledgement of her dedication and resilience. As she returned to her duties, she could feel the shift in the attitudes of her colleagues. Whispers that once trailed her now transformed into words of encouragement and support. She had proven her innocence, and in doing so, had reclaimed her place in their hearts and minds. Greta found herself surrounded by friends who rallied to her side, determined to help her rebuild her life. Arya, her steadfast friend, was there every step of the way, reminding her of her worth and strength. Together, they shared laughter over coffee breaks and long shifts, slowly mending the bonds that had frayed during the scandal. One evening, as they sat on a bench outside the hospital, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Arya turned to Greta with a smile. "You know, you're stronger than you think. This whole experience has shown just how resilient you really are." Greta smiled back, feeling the warmth of friendship envelop her. "I couldn't have done it without your support. It's been a long journey, but I've learned so much about myself." As they continued to talk, Greta felt a sense of peace settle within her. She had faced the darkest moments of her life and emerged stronger. The storm had passed, leaving behind a clearer sky and the promise of new beginnings. She was ready to embrace the future, armed with the knowledge that she could overcome anything that came her way. With her heart full of hope, Greta returned to her patients, pouring her passion and care into every interaction. She was no longer just a nurse, she was a beacon of resilience, a symbol of strength for those around her. And as she walked the familiar halls of the hospital, she knew that her story was far from over. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with healing, compassion, and the unwavering belief that the truth would always prevail.